Of all the ways to die recorded in the Bible, this might be the hardest one to accept. A prophet obeyed God, carried out his mission flawlessly, refused every reward, and was killed by a lion because he stopped to eat bread. He didn't steal, he didn't kill, he didn't blaspheme, he ate, and it cost him his life. The account is found in chapter 13 of the first book of Kings. And to understand what happened on that road and why it happened, you need to go back to the exact moment where it all began, not on the road, not at the lion attack, but in a city called Bethel, in front of an altar that should never have existed. Israel was divided. After Solomon's death, the kingdom that David unified through blood and strategy split in two. To the north, 10 tribes followed Jeroboam, son of Nebat. To the south, the tribe of Judah and part of Benjamin remained with Rehoboam, Solomon's son, in Jerusalem. The political division was brutal, but the spiritual division was worse. Because when you split a kingdom in half, you don't just divide territory, you divide loyalty, you divide worship, and that's exactly what Jeroboam realized. His problem was simple and devastating at the same time. Jerusalem was in the southern territory. Solomon's temple, the only legitimate place of worship to God according to Mosaic tradition, was in Jerusalem. And 3 times a year, every devout Israelite went up to Jerusalem for the sacred festivals, Passover, Pentecost, and Tabernacles. These were massive pilgrimages. Entire families carrying offerings, crossing dirt roads, sleeping in the open, walking for days on end to reach the temple. If the northern people kept going down to Jerusalem to worship, Jeroboam would lose control. Religious loyalty would restore political loyalty. And he knew, with the cold clarity of someone who understands power, that all it would take was one festival, one sacrifice, one moment of collective worship in the original temple for the people to start murmuring, "Why don't we go back to the house of David?" So Jeroboam made a decision that would change the spiritual history of Israel forever. He had 2 golden calves cast. He placed one in Dan, at the far northern edge of his territory, near the headwaters of the Jordan River, and the other in Bethel, at the far south, strategically positioned on the route that led to Jerusalem. The location was no accident. Bethel was less than 12 miles from Jerusalem. Any pilgrim coming down from the north toward the temple would pass through Bethel first, and there they would find an altar, a golden calf, and an official message from the king. The biblical text records Jeroboam's exact words to the people. "It is too much for you to go up to Jerusalem. Here are your gods, O Israel, who brought you up out of Egypt." Nearly the same words, almost identical, that Aaron used in the Sinai desert centuries earlier in front of the first golden calf. The repetition is not coincidence. It's a pattern, a national relapse. But Jeroboam didn't stop at the calves. He built shrines on high places scattered across the territory. He appointed priests who were not from the tribe of Levi, a direct and non-negotiable violation of the Mosaic law, which reserved the priesthood exclusively for Aaron's descendants. Any man who wanted to could become a priest by paying a fee. The priesthood went from being a calling to being a purchase, and as if that weren't enough, Jeroboam created a festival on the 15th day of the 8th month, a deliberate imitation of the Feast of Tabernacles, which took place on the 15th day of the 7th month in Jerusalem. He changed the sacred calendar, changed the priesthood, changed the place of worship, changed the object of worship. He created a parallel religion with the appearance of legitimacy and the structure of political convenience. And then the day of the inauguration at Bethel arrived. Jeroboam went up to the altar. The people were gathered. The incense was burning. The illegitimate priests were positioned in their ceremonial garments. The aroma of sacrifice rose in the hot air. And at the exact moment, the king stretched out his hand over the altar to offer incense, the ultimate gesture of religious authority. A man appeared. without warning, without invitation, without an army, without an entourage, without a name. The biblical text identifies him only as the man of God who came from Judah. He came from the south, from rival territory, from Rehoboam's kingdom, and he came with a message that no one there wanted to hear, especially the king, standing with his hands stretched over the altar. He didn't speak to Jeroboam. He didn't address the people. He didn't ask permission. He looked directly at the altar, at the stones, and spoke words that no one in that generation would fully understand. "O altar, altar, thus says the Lord, a son shall be born to the house of David, Josiah by name, and on you he shall sacrifice the priests of the high places who burn incense on you, and human bones shall be burned on you." Think about what was just said. This was not a generic warning, not a vague threat. It was a prophecy with a name, Josiah, and with a specific action, human bones burned on that altar. And it would be fulfilled 300 years later with a precision that defies any rational explanation. Jeroboam heard it and reacted the way kings react when they feel threatened in front of their own people. He stretched out his hand toward the prophet and shouted, "Seize him!" But the hand that pointed at the prophet withered instantly. It froze, it stiffened, it hung suspended in the air, locked, as if the tendons had turned to stone. At the same time, the altar split apart with a crash. The ashes poured out onto the ground. The sign the prophet had promised as confirmation of his word was fulfilled instantly before hundreds of witnesses. The king, who seconds earlier wanted to arrest the man of God, was now begging for help. His arrogance lasted the length of a single gesture. "Intercede with the Lord your God," Jeroboam pleaded, "that my hand may be restored." Notice the wording, "your God," not "my God." Even in desperation, Jeroboam kept his distance. He wanted the benefit without the commitment. And the prophet prayed. The hand returned to normal. Jeroboam felt his fingers move again, the blood circulate. Life returned to that dead limb. And then he did what any experienced politician would do. He tried to buy the man he couldn't silence. He invited the prophet to the palace, to eat, to rest, to receive a reward, to bring him close, to neutralize through hospitality what he couldn't neutralize through force. The prophet's response was direct and left no room for interpretation. "Even if you gave me half your house, I would not go with you. I will not eat bread nor drink water in this place, for so it was commanded me by the word of the Lord. You shall not eat bread, nor drink water, nor return by the way you came." 3 prohibitions, clear, specific, non-negotiable. Do not eat in Bethel, do not drink in Bethel, do not return by the same road. Each prohibition carried meaning that went far beyond the literal. In the ancient world, sharing a meal with someone was sealing a covenant. It meant accepting protection, hospitality, a bond. Eating Jeroboam's bread in Bethel would communicate to the people that there was fellowship between the God of Judah and the idolatrous system of the north. The prohibition against eating was a political and spiritual declaration. There is no possible table between the word of God and Jeroboam's invention. None. Not even a cup of water. Not returning by the same road meant the mission was irreversible and the prophet should leave no trace. The route in was one of confrontation. The route out had to be different, a protection against pursuit, against ambush, against any attempt to follow his steps. The instruction was practical and symbolic at the same time. And up to this point, the prophet had obeyed every detail with absolute perfection. He resisted the king, he resisted the gold, he resisted the prestige. He left Bethel by a different road, exactly as he'd been instructed. If the story ended here, this nameless man would be remembered as one of the most unshakable prophets of the Old Testament. But the story didn't end here. And what happened in the hours that followed is what turns this account into one of the most disturbing in all of Scripture. There was an old prophet living in Bethel. The text is careful here. It doesn't call him a false prophet. It doesn't say he was pagan. It doesn't say he served the golden calves. It simply says he was a prophet and that he lived in Bethel. His sons had gone to the ceremony at the altar and witnessed everything: Jeroboam's withered hand, the split altar, the ashes on the ground, the restoration of the king's arm. They came running back and told their father every detail. The old man listened to it all. He asked questions. He wanted to know which road the man of God had taken. And then he gave an order his sons probably didn't understand: saddle the donkey for me. And he went after the prophet from Judah. He found the man of God sitting under an oak tree. Sitting, not walking, not running, not keeping the pace of someone with a mission to complete. Stopped, resting in the shade, perhaps exhausted from the intensity of the confrontation with Jeroboam, perhaps hungry. After all, he hadn't eaten or drunk since leaving Judah. Perhaps simply relieved to have survived the most dangerous moment of his life. The text doesn't explain the reason for the stop, but it records the fact. And the fact matters. He was vulnerable. The old prophet made his invitation: "Come home with me and eat bread." The response was immediate and firm. The man of God repeated almost word for word exactly what he had said to King Jeroboam. "I cannot return with you or go to your house. I will not eat bread or drink water with you in this place. For I received a command from the Lord: you shall not eat bread or drink water there, nor return by the way you went." The same refusal, the same firmness, the same clarity. And then the old prophet of Bethel said something that changed the course of everything. "I too am a prophet as you are. And an angel spoke to me by the word of the Lord, saying, bring him back with you to your house, that he may eat bread and drink water." The biblical text is brutal in the sentence that follows. Dry, direct, no softening, but he lied to him. 5 words that carry the weight of everything that would come next. The old prophet used the language of divine authority. An angel spoke to me by the word of the Lord, to fabricate a permission that God never granted. And the man of God, who had resisted the most powerful king in northern Israel, gave in to an old man sitting on a donkey. He went back. He sat at the old prophet's table. He ate bread. He drank water. He broke all 3 prohibitions at once. He ate, he drank, and he went back on a road he should never have retraced. And while they were sitting at the table, something happened that chills the blood of anyone reading the text carefully. The word of the Lord came, but it didn't come to the prophet from Judah. It came to the old man, the liar, the deceiver, and the message that came from the deceiver's mouth was directed at the deceived. "Thus says the Lord, because you have been disobedient to the word of the Lord, and have not kept the commandment that the Lord your God commanded you, but came back and ate bread and drank water, in the place of which he said to you, eat no bread and drink no water, your corpse shall not come to the tomb of your fathers." The sentence was pronounced during a meal, between a piece of bread and a sip of water. No thunder, no earthquake, no fire from heaven, just words spoken by the mouth of the one who caused the fall. And the prophet from Judah heard every syllable in silence. The text records no reaction, no defense, no argument, no plea. He heard, and he knew it was true. After the meal, the old prophet saddled the donkey for the man of God, a strangely courteous gesture from someone who had just handed a man over to death. And the prophet from Judah departed, alone, mounted on the donkey, on a road he should not have been traveling. He didn't get far. At some point along that dusty road between Bethel and the border of Judah, a lion found him. The text is precise in its description. The lion killed him. But what happened after the death is what transforms this account from human tragedy into supernatural demonstration. The lion did not devour the body. It didn't tear the flesh. It didn't drag the corpse away to feed, and it didn't attack the donkey, which remained there, standing. Beside the body and beside the predator, 3 elements on the road: a dead man, a living beast of burden, and a motionless lion. Travelers passed along the road and saw the scene, and they stood frozen, because none of it made sense by any natural logic. Lions don't do this. Lions kill and devour. It's pure instinct. A hungry lion beside a fresh body and a defenseless donkey should have been feeding. But that lion didn't follow nature. It followed an instruction. It stood beside the corpse like a sentinel, guarding, watching, carrying out an order that no human being gave. The irrational animal obeyed with more precision than the prophet who had received the word directly from the mouth of God. The news spread. It reached Bethel. The old prophet heard what the travelers described: the body, the donkey, the lion, and said, "It is the man of God who was disobedient to the word of the Lord." He saddled his donkey and went to the road. He found the scene exactly as it had been described: the body intact on the ground, the donkey alive beside it, the lion motionless, standing guard. The old man dismounted, placed the body on the donkey, brought it back to Bethel, and buried the prophet from Judah in his own tomb. And he wept over him with genuine grief. Alas, my brother. The old prophet's reaction after the death reveals layers that complicate any simple judgment of this story. He mourned. He honored the body. He gave the prophet from Judah a dignified burial, in his own tomb, not in some random grave. And then he gave specific instructions to his sons, words that only make sense if you understand what he knew. "When I die, bury me in the same tomb where the man of God is buried. Lay my bones beside his bones." The old prophet of Bethel, the same one who lied, the same one who forged an angelic message, the same one who caused the fall and death of the man of God, wanted his remains placed next to the remains of the prophet he destroyed. And the reason is revealing. He believed the prophecy. He knew the altar at Bethel would be destroyed. He knew bones would be burned. And he wanted his own protected by proximity to the bones of the man whose word was genuinely from God. Now, step back and look at the complete architecture of this narrative, because what the text reveals goes far beyond a man who died for eating bread. The central issue was never the food, it was the hierarchy of the word. When God speaks directly to someone and gives a clear, specific, unambiguous instruction, no subsequent voice, no matter how spiritual it seems, no matter how credentialed it is, no matter how logical it sounds, has the authority to override what was said first. The prophet from Judah received a direct order. No intermediaries, no angels, no dreams, a direct word from God to him. And when the old prophet appeared saying, "An angel spoke to me," he was presenting a second-degree authority trying to overwrite a first-degree authority. And the man of God accepted the substitution. He didn't fall because of weakness of the flesh. Hunger and thirst were the context, not the cause. He fell because of weakness of discernment. He traded a word he received directly for a word he received indirectly. And that trade, that inverted hierarchy, cost everything. The text also exposes something about the vulnerability of the in-between moments. The prophet was at his peak when he confronted Jeroboam, overflowing with power, unshakable in his refusal, solid as rock in the face of gold and real threat. But when he sat down under that oak tree, he was in the gap between the mission and the return. The adrenaline had faded. The body was demanding its toll. The hunger was real. The thirst was real. The exhaustion was real. And it was precisely in that moment of physical and emotional vulnerability that the temptation appeared. Not looking like temptation, looking like spirituality. "An angel spoke to me." The most dangerous lie is never the one that openly contradicts God. It's the one that claims to bring an update from him. The manner of death also carries meaning that the text expects you to notice. God didn't send fire. He didn't open the earth. He didn't send a plague. He sent a lion, a single animal. and he made that animal act against its entire nature, kill without devouring, remain without fleeing, guard without attacking. If the prophet had died of natural causes on the road, a heart attack, a fall from the donkey, a bandit ambush, it would have been an explainable death. Sad, but explainable. The lion turned the death into a public declaration. Every traveler who passed and saw a wild predator standing beside an intact body and a living donkey would understand that something beyond nature had been at work. The death was not merely a consequence, it was a communication. And there's yet another layer in this narrative that most people miss when they read chapter 13. The account functions as an inverted mirror of the story of Balaam. Recorded in the book of Numbers, Balaam was a pagan prophet hired to curse Israel. On the way, his donkey saw an angel that Balaam couldn't see, and the animal refused to move forward until God opened the donkey's mouth to speak. In the case of the prophet from Judah, the pattern is reversed. The animal, the donkey, remains mute and obedient. The one who speaks is the false messenger, and the one who should have had the spiritual vision to discern the lie, the prophet, is exactly the one who fails. The story also raises a question that the text itself doesn't fully answer, and that absence of an answer is part of the message. Why did the old prophet lie? The account doesn't assign a motive. It doesn't say God told him to test the man from Judah. It doesn't say he acted out of envy, although many scholars speculate this. That the old man, living in Bethel at the heart of Jeroboam's corrupt system, saw the power operating through another prophet and wanted to draw him close. Others suggest it was theological curiosity. He wanted to see if the man of God's obedience was truly absolute. Still, others see something more disturbing. A prophet who had grown so comfortable with the idolatrous system around him that he could no longer distinguish between using God's name truthfully and using God's name conveniently. But regardless of the old man's motivation, the judgment didn't fall on him. It fell on the prophet from Judah, and this deeply disturbs the human logic of justice. The liar lived, the deceived died. It seems inverted, it seems unjust, but the text operates on a different logic. Responsibility is proportional to the clarity of the instruction received. The prophet from Judah had a direct order. The old man of Bethel did not have that same order. The reckoning falls on the one who received the word, not on the one who corrupted it. And this principle echoes throughout the entire Old Testament as a consistent pattern. Adam and Eve didn't commit murder. They ate a forbidden fruit, and they lost Eden. Moses didn't worship idols. He struck a rock when God told him to speak to it, and he lost entry to the Promised Land. Uzzah didn't steal the Ark of the Covenant. He reached out his hand to keep it from falling off the cart, and he died on the spot. In every case, the punishment seems disproportionate when measured by the human gravity of the action. But if you measure it by the clarity of the original instruction, the logic reveals itself. The more specific the order, the more absolute the obedience required. And no one on that road had received a clearer, more direct, more specific instruction than the prophet from Judah. The text also preserves a theological detail that many readers overlook. The prophet from Judah lost his life, but he didn't lose his prophecy. The word he spoke against the altar at Bethel was not invalidated by his disobedience. It remained active. It remained true. It kept moving silently through history for 300 years until it found the exact moment of fulfillment. God didn't withdraw the authority of the message. He withdrew the protection of the messenger. And the distinction is theologically crucial. The validity of the divine word doesn't depend on the perfection of the one who carries it. The mission was accomplished. The disobedience was punished, and the two realities coexisted without contradiction. 300 years passed, Entire generations were born, lived and died without knowing the name of the prophet who had spoken against Bethel. The northern kingdom was conquered by Assyria in 722 BC. The 10 tribes were scattered. Bethel passed through foreign hands. But the altar remained, and so did the word, until a young king of Judah named Josiah, exactly the name spoken by the prophet from Judah 300 years earlier, launched a religious reform without precedent in the history of Israel. In the 18th year of his reign, Josiah went up to Bethel. He destroyed the altar. He burned human bones on it, exactly as had been prophesied. And when his men found a marked tomb on a nearby hillside, Josiah asked, "Whose tomb is that?" They answered, "It is the tomb of the man of God who came from Judah and proclaimed these things that you have done against this altar at Bethel." And Josiah ordered, "Leave him alone, let no one disturb his bones." And the bones of the old prophet of Bethel, buried alongside, were also preserved, protected by their proximity to the man whose word proved true. The prophecy spoken that day before Jeroboam, with name, action, and detail, was fulfilled 3 centuries later with a precision that the text records without fanfare, as if simply noting the obvious. The altar was destroyed, the bones were burned. Josiah did exactly what had been spoken before. Even his great-great-grandfather was born. He never received a name in the biblical text. He's not called Isaiah, Elijah, or Elisha. He is simply the man of God who came from Judah. And yet, his story occupies an entire chapter of the first book of Kings. His prophecy was fulfilled with surgical precision 300 years later. His tomb was the only one preserved when Josiah destroyed every pagan altar in Bethel. A nameless prophet left a mark more enduring than kings who had palaces, armies, and crowns. Perhaps because what defines someone is not the name they carry, but the word they deliver. And his word, as every syllable, every detail, outlasted empires. The man fell. The word stood.